This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, Q-Cubes.
Hello, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the sci-fi critique and review show where resistance is futile, so you have to listen. Or something unspecifiedly bad will happen to you. I am Gep, when I'm joined, as always, by my friend and co-host, Dr. Izix.
Hi.
And we've made it.
Yeah, we made it. We're here.
This is when it starts to get iconic.
Yes. Yeah. A new Nemesis shows up, but not the one from Nemesis. Anyway, cyborgs, cubes.
Yeah,
Borg.
the cyborg aliens that represent something about conformism, like not individualism, like our grand crew has.
Yes.
They're scary because they're all the same, or something. They haven't quite nailed down why they don't like them quite yet. They're just a big nemesis-y thing in this episode.
Yeah, they have a behavior, and that's why they're bad in the fiction, but in terms of the meta-narrative, also they're supposed to be insects at some point, but the episode was going over budget already, so.
And that makes a bit more sense. It would be less scary.
Yeah, but it's like, we can't quite do, like the whole animatronics for, a whole bunch of them, coming onto the ship or something like that, so, we'll go to the hardware store and get some tubes. Kind of put them everywhere.
So this is the episode of tubes. It's the episode called Q Who, which is interesting that it names itself as a Q-centric episode, even though he's more of a side trickster character in this one, and we're really introducing the Borg, the big bads.
Yes, and in fact, Q's involvement here is very interesting, but I think that might be something I want to talk about after we do the synopsis.
So this episode was written by Maurice Hurley, who we've heard of because he was the head writer for this period of Star Trek, and he shows up a lot. Of course, he's very famous for this, doing this, coming up with the Borgs.
Yeah, it's like, I want to do the insect thing, but we'll turn them into cyborgs and all of that, and hey, people really seem to like that, so we'll bring them back a lot. Over and over again for the next, few decades.
And we've got a couple of side characters right now. We are introducing Lycia Naff as Sonia Gomez. She's supposed to be a reoccurring character, but she isn't.
Yeah. She shows up, I believe, in 2 episodes, this one and the next one.
Yes, she was supposed to be like a new character who they're bringing in, introducing. They do a whole thing, and it's just 2 episodes and you're gone. Sorry.
Oh. Sort of another O'Brien sort of character, because, he's fairly established at this point as sort of, one of the larger menagerie of the folks that you can recognize.
Yeah. She began her career as a dancer in the series Fame, and went on to a lot of TV shows in the 80s and 90s. She had recurring roles in General Hospital, and we've talked about her before because she was in Total Recall, where she played the 3-breasted mutant.
Indeed. Mary. And she also reprises the role of Sonia Gomez in Lower Decks as Captain Sonia Gomez.
Oh yeah, she did show up for a minute, didn't she?
It's like, she kind of, found her way, I suppose, and, she's a lot less, I guess, panicky and energetic than here, so.
Nah, it's just fun. They get to pull up anybody and be like, this side character, they're a captain now.
Yep.
Anyone who was ever on the Enterprise for any length of time. Cap.
Yes. Maybe after her short stint on the Enterprise here, she's like, maybe I would be happier somewhere else. And then because she was well qualified for the Enterprise, ending up on any other ship means like, holy smokes, you're like the best person ever. Because apparently all the best people are only on the Enterprise. And and we're going to make you the lieutenant commander in 6 months here. It's fine.
And we also have John DeLance, who shows up as Q. We've talked about him a couple times before, and believe it or not, we are probably going to see him show up again.
Yes.
So
spoilers. Yeah.
With also more central to this episode, we have Whoopi Goldberg playing Guinan, who I don't mention very often because she's kind of considered part of the main cast, even though her character shows up about as often as Q does.
Yes. I guess at this point she's, slightly less often than Pulaski, but Pulaski's not in this one, so,
I know. I should look at how many episodes is Pulaski actually in, because they made this whole hullabaloo about a new doctor, and she's barely in the season.
Yes. It's like every other episode sort of thing, I think.
And that's everybody. We also have a bunch of extras who are in ridiculous costumes with white face paint. And the voice of the Borg in this episode is provided by director Rob Bowman. So he got to be the voice of the Borgs.
Oh no, it's the director. He's talking to us. We're breaking the fourth wall. No, that's just the bad guy of the week. Even worse.
So we enter into the ship where LaForge is having a odd conversation with the newly assigned Sonia Gomez. He is criticizing her for saying please to a replicator, because I don't know why, really. She gets...
It's to set up a contrast with interactions they have with others with their technology. She's like, I want to be friendly to my technology, while others are like, we're going to harvest it. Or something, right?
We do that now. Like, people now say please to machines more often than people. In fact, people are often more polite to a machine.
Well, machines can't hurt your feelings.
This seems interesting to me that in the time where you talk to all of your technology, someone would be like, why are you saying please to a replicator?
Don't you know replicators are the least respected machines on the ship? Come on!
Also, I still argue the number of times that their random technology gains sentience and just starts randomly doing things. Maybe you should be more polite to the computer. Anyway, she gets so wrapped up in this conversation that she forgets she's holding hot chocolate and shouldn't have it in engineering. And when she turns to leave, she runs straight into Captain Picard, spilling her drink all over him.
Now, this seems to be a running trend with Picard at this point, of someone kind of just spilling stuff all over his uniform and him leaving kind of miffed.
Yeah, welcome to the ship. You have spilled something on me. This seems to just be what new crewmen do. It's tradition. I also am interested that in this far future era where everything is these fancy touchscreens and whatever, apparently you still shouldn't spill drinks on your keyboard.
Yes. Yeah, I know the ship's supposed to clean itself or something like that, but getting too much hot chocolate or in Scotty's case whiskey in the controller panel is probably a bad idea.
All right, so this was most of what we're gonna get of Gomez. She was supposed to be a love interest for Geordi. She's only in this episode. The next episode, like we said, and in this episode, she keeps talking up how bad the situation is every now and then. She was like, oh, everything's bad. I didn't think I was going to encounter death, etc. But she doesn't really have an arc, and it's not really worth cutting back to her for one line at a time. So for the purposes of this episode, she's done. This is it. There we go.
So, if you want more of Sonia, watch the Lower Decks episode, honestly. It does better for the character.
So Picard is heading back to his quarters to get changed, and when he steps out of the turbo lift, he is suddenly on a shuttlecraft with Q.
It's like that time you opened the turbo lift door, and there was all the warp space stuff going on.
Yeah, he doesn't have the best luck with turbo lift exits.
Yeah. So someday, for sure, he's just going to get stuck with some kids in one or something like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, that would be awful. That would be like his personal nightmare.
Yeah.
Let's hope that doesn't happen. So Q's taken Picard off the ship because he promised he wouldn't interfere with the ship anymore. But, they've got something to discuss, so he's just going to keep Picard on this little shuttlecraft, for years if they need to, just to hear him out.
Yeah, it's like, we're going to be waiting for a while if you don't talk to me. Also, I should point out that technically Q had said that he would stay out of humanity's way as part of that whole deal with Riker thing. So I think this is technically violating it either way.
Yeah, but he does that.
But this also feeds back into my grand fan theory about Q and him showing up out of order, that this is actually before his encounter in the previous time he showed up. That actually, to his perspective takes place later, so he's like, yeah, sure, whatever, yeah, I said I would do cool things, and I'm got a way around it. Anyway, there's this other thing I want to talk about.
That's true. There's no reason to believe that Q exists in the same linear time that we do.
Indeed.
Back on the Enterprise, Guidance noticed something's wrong, and she asks Riker to check on things, and they figure out that the shuttlecraft and the captain are missing.
Yes, part of this is actually that Troy just kind of shows up on the bridge, like, really worried. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to find the captain. And they're like, well, we're trying to figure out that there's maybe something wrong. And, oh gosh, the captain's missing.
You'd think they would keep track of that, since they can basically track everyone on the ship. You'd think it'd be like, hey, the captain left unexpectedly. Just up and disappeared.
Well, I do kind of appreciate to an extent that they let folks have some privacy, that it's not just constantly giving reports of where you're at. But at the same time, if someone, say like the captain specifically, just is no longer on the ship suddenly, having some sort of alert would be nice, because, if suddenly someone gets beamed off, that should be maybe something to worry about.
Like, there's privacy, yes. If someone suddenly leaves a ship in the middle of nowhere where there's nowhere to go, like, maybe that should be an automatic alert. People trying to disappear. We're kind of in space, so there's nowhere for them to go.
Yes. So did they melt? Did some, Uber being transport them away? Have they fallen into another dimension, or perhaps gotten abducted by aliens from, some sort of region of subspace?
So an unspecified amount of time later, Q gets Picard to agree to hear him out and returns to the ship, and they wind up in 10 forward. Riker heads down and they detect that the captain is on board, and Guinan is also there, and she and Q know each other from a couple of centuries back.
Yes, and they do the hands up, and, we're going to, have a mind battle or something like that sort of thing.
Yeah, but Q doesn't want to get distracted by all that. He is here to join the crew. He's a homeless Q, because he's been kicked out for failure and general being an ass.
Well, I guess that kind of was a long time coming, potentially. At least they didn't turn you human.
Yeah, then Guinan confirms that, in fact, not all of the Q are this bad. This one is particularly annoying. So it makes sense that they don't like him very much.
So I've had dealings with him specifically, and such an asshole.
So Picard does consider it, but he doesn't feel like he could be able to trust Q enough to have him as a member of his crew. Q thinks this is a mistake, and to prove it, he flings the Enterprise through space 7,000 light years away, over 2 years of travel from the nearest starbase.
Now, I should point out that sort of the thing that sets off Q specifically is that Picard's like, yeah, you can't trust you, yeah, but, we don't really need you. We are prepared to go out and explore now. So, you're sort of not really offering anything that, that would overcome that whole trust issue. And then it's like, oh, really? Let's go.
Which is still a weak argument.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, you think you're ready to explore? What if I take you out of the reasonable region that you would explore anytime in the near future?
Wow.
So they find a nearby planet used to have an industrial civilization, but all the cities have been scooped from the Earth. That's like the outposts along the neutral zone. Remember that thing that keeps getting set up and they thought was going to be a big deal and then never really was?
Yes. An episode where, all right, we're dealing with some folks out of time, and that's our A-plot, I guess. But also there's this serious thing, and we're meeting the Marlins for the first time for this series. And so there's a lot of big stuff going on here, and there's an important, pressing matter here, and we're just going to ignore it.
Well, like we said before, they wanted that to be the big Borg reveal in that episode, and then the Romulans and the humans would have to team up to fight the bigger enemy, and then they just they couldn't get it to work out with the budget and schedule and everything.
Yeah, well, just going over budget constantly with the Borg, I guess, is a thing. So,
They also now detect a ship approaching. It is a strangely generalized cube. It doesn't have a bridge, it doesn't have specific sections, it doesn't have shields or recognizable weapons. It's just a big hunk of ship.
So a technological soup, kind of, or jello, maybe.
It's just decentralized everything.
It's like Mastodon.
Yeah, but probably easier to switch between the different things. Maybe that's why the Borg's so slow to respond to stuff. I'm like, let me log out of this server
and log into this other one. All right, and this is the wrong one. I have to go back actually.
So Picard asks Guinan to monitor the situation from 10 forward, since she knows this region of space as whatever she is, we still haven't established this much yet, she knows what's going on because this ship is the Borg, and a century ago they destroyed her people's civilization and scattered them to the winds.
Wow, that sounds like a really big thing to have not talked about ever.
Yeah, well, I guess since you don't know these things exist.
Yeah, well, I guess it is important that now for us to learn about them. So, Guinan, give us the 411.
No, that's about it so far.
Oh, okay.
There'll be more later. But she does suggest that they raise shields and protect themselves. But the shields basically don't do anything because one of the Borg beams into engineering, hangs out for a bit, kind of interfaces with their computer a little bit so that they can figure out what's going on. It tries to take over the ship, so they shoot it, and it does not go down easy. They have to shoot it a lot.
Yes. I actually rather like this scene for a few reasons. It is kind of very clearly, setting up that these, these cyborgs are here, are want to study them first before doing it, taking any actions, which is, kind of reasonable. If you've not encountered a Galaxy-class starship before, this is perhaps the good opportunity to take it all in and figure out, how to deal with this, and if you want to, or whatever. I also appreciate Q kind of doing this thing where he just pops up behind people, and mainly Picard, to be like, hey, you shouldn't let him do that. Ho, ho, ho. And of course, there's the delegation maneuver where Picard's like, get him to stop, and nods to Worf, who then nods to the other yellow shirt, who then approaches and then gets tossed around.
I mean, that's the chain of command. It's functioning.
Yes.
It's very difficult to get into the proper mindset for this episode because they're setting up these things so well. This thing just beams on, is just scanning stuff, doesn't want to interact, isn't acting in any particular reasonable way. It doesn't even seem to have any kind of self-preservation. And that we don't know what's going on with these things. We later, coming back to this and knowing everything that we do about the Borg getting set up in future, we know that this is malevolent. But we don't yet. We shouldn't yet. We should just be like, what is going on? What are these things?
This is very peculiar. Huh.
So as soon as they killed the first one, another one beams in, and they try to shoot it, but this time it's got a shield.
Dang it, it has a personal force shield. Wait, why don't we have that?
Yeah, that seems like it's something you could. I mean, what happened to those belts from the animated series?
Yeah, just turn that up a lot.
So the second one finishes what the first one was doing with the scans, grabs a few components off of the dead one, beams away, and the rest of the dead one disintegrates.
Well, I hope that doesn't leave a weird smell in here.
No, the self-cleaning carpet doesn't work very fast because it does leave a stain.
Yes. It's gone by the next episode, but still.
So Picard has a meeting with the staff and Guinan. She informs them that they're screwed.
Yeah.
You can't negotiate with these things. They don't want anything as you understand it. You can't trade. Their only motivation is to take things that are useful for themselves and to leave the rest.
Well, in that case, we should probably, back away from them slightly.
The Borg contact them. They've determined that their defenses are too weak to defeat the Borg and to not bother defending themselves.
Yeah, otherwise you'll be punished.
The Borg tractor beam cuts a part of the ship out with a laser. Picard orders the tractor beam taken out. They shoot it to no effect. He tells them to use the real gun and destroy a good fifth of the Borg ship, which I get you're trying to be all peaceful and stuff, but given everything that's happening, you didn't want to do that first?
Yeah. Use all force appropriate. They ran off with our only toilet on the ship.
Yeah, they're killing crew members. Shoot them politely. Well, that didn't work. Shoot them rudely. Oh, we've destroyed a large section of the enemy.
Yes, and I will say that the damage on the Borg cube is actually rather impressive. It's all models and a little bit of CG kind of added in here or there, but still, it's sort of all right. So I guess when the Enterprise is going full all in, it can actually do a lot of damage.
Yeah, it does look cool. And it does melt part of the ship, and then it's disabled for a bit.
Mm-hmm. It's well, they seem to be no longer cutting us up, so that's nice.
So they've dealt with this threat for the minute. They return to their meeting. Guinan doesn't know that much more about what's going on. The Borg are a mix of organic and artificial life. They are not a group, but are a single hive mind of a mixture of all of their consciousnesses put together.
A hive mind like those giant brain cells that once took over Spock.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. I'm going for all the references today.
They probably should run away, but, while they're here, they may as well learn as much as they can, so Picard sends Riker over to the ship with Worf and Data.
They seem disabled for the moment, so let's go check them out. See what we can... maybe we can establish a dialogue, or at least look at them.
So they find the ship filled with Borg. Surprise, surprise. All of them are in slots in the wall. Each one has a Borg in it, and they are interfaced with the ship through little nodules on their wrists that people decided was dumb, so they didn't do that for very long.
I do, kind of get annoyed with a lot of the nitpicking in terms of the Borg being different from one interaction to another, but they're also a race of cyborgs that are constantly trying to integrate new technology into their existence. So having a different USB adapter one time versus the next is perfectly okay with me.
I know, that is in fact their whole thing. Is advanced evolution through taking over technological and biological aspects of other species that they encounter.
Exactly.
That is very annoying because you get an old Borg on a new ship and you need to get out the USB-C to electronic decorative twirly thingy interface.
My arm thingy is like it's like a doohickey that spins around, but yours is more like a claw. And we're just not going to be able to, interface properly unless we've got this new cable thing going on.
One of the Borgs walks completely by them, ignoring them utterly because they don't think they're threatening or whatever. It's just on its own task. Mm-hmm. They find some Borg babies. They're in drawers, and they seem to be either born with or are given implants immediately upon birth.
So, I guess Picard has... a big reason to avoid being on a Borg ship in the future. Mm-hmm. There's children there.
And Data discovers that the Borg ship is repairing itself, which is probably why all of the Borgs are in stasis, because they're conserving energy for repairs.
Wait a moment. They're repairing? Uh-oh.
I do think this one's interesting, too, because, they do have the heavy implication that the Borg are breeding, themselves, because there's babies on board. They go like, oh, they've been given implants immediately, and maybe they're born organic, etc. And I could see people complaining with the like, oh, that's so different than what we see later. But it's actually just a reasonable assumption one could make if you find babies and you don't know anything else about a species. It's reasonable to assume that the species has babies like every other species you've seen. Not that these are like babies that they abducted from some random planet and have put implants into.
Indeed. It could even be a thing where they, both assimilate babies and also have maturation chambers to create new ones. So if you're not like trying to improve the Borg in total, but you just need more people, you can do that too. It just takes more time.
So they do decide that since the Borg cube is repairing the ship, since the Borg cube is repairing itself, that is a problem. They decide to get the away team out of there and run. The Borg ship starts to follow. They can't do anything to slow it down. Despite the fact that they destroyed a fifth of it with the one shot, they aren't doing anything now.
Yes.
Q shows up to gloat about how they're doomed. The Borg are closing in, they're taking down their shields, they're losing engines. Picard finally tells Q to end all of this, because if they all die, he won't get to gloat about it.
Yeah, and our photon torpedoes aren't doing anything. Wesley's nowhere to be seen to save the ship. Q, you're our only option.
Yep, he goes, fine, we need you. Get us out of here.
Oh, cool, you finally admitted it. Yep. Hooray!
And he sends the ship back where they were.
Back there. Wait a second, there's Wesley.
So Picard goes to talk things over with Guinan. She thinks that Q made them encounter the Borg way sooner than their natural progression would have, and they will be coming, possibly before humanity is ready for them.
Uh-oh, we should probably, get ready for that then.
Picard thinks that maybe they were shown that they were being a bit too complacent, and maybe they should be more prepared for what's coming.
Reasonable.
Yeah. So, 2 points of view. Maybe you would have been in a better position by the time you naturally encountered them, or maybe you thought you were invulnerable and you were not doing great.
Yeah, because so far during this entire series, the Enterprise has been kind of flying around being the badass ship, in most situations, and the only kind of exception was the business with last time we had hints of the Borg with the Romulans there, and it's like, this big ship over there could destroy us, and so that's the only really big threat we've run into there. But now we have something else that is threatening us. So maybe it's not just Romulans we should be worried about. In fact, Q's kind of dismissive of them in this episode. It's like, the Klingons, the Romulans, they're nothing.
Yeah, what? Oh, you think that the people who are on the similar technological level to you are bad? That's cute.
Yes. Wait until you find the real threats out there. Yeah, so that's the episode. And I will say that I really loved Delancey's acting here, because he's kind of bouncing between, being kind of intentionally annoying to sort of, which kind of goes with his, previous appearances to a certain extent. There's other times where he's like, yeah, guys, just like, you're being idiots, and I'm not going to be, that helpful, other than to point out the really obvious, because you just don't get it, you silly humans.
Yeah, he does a good job being the chaotic trickster god character in this. It does feel like they're never like... This is one of the few times, really, when Q shows up, that he is very directly responsible for people getting killed. They're never really mad enough at him for that. Most of the time, he just kind of screws around with everyone, and then at the end, it kind of gets reset, and everyone's basically fine. This time, he's like, what, you think you're better than me? Well, let's go get a bunch of you killed then.
Yeah, we're going to have actual stakes this time, so let's roll. But, so kind of going back to my fan theory thing there, this particular instance of him being present and it not being fully 100% back to status quo afterwards implies that, this is an intentional act on his part. And, any sort of framing or stories he tells in order to set up the things he does can be complete fabrication. Saying that he's been kicked out of the continuum, yeah, that might be a complete lie. That, he's just trying to look for an excuse to goad Picard into saying or doing something that would allow him to then, it's like, oh, really? In order to get them in the situation. So, my idea is that, Q has this happen now, specifically so that the Enterprise and the Federation, and all that are, nominally tipped off that there's this massive threat out there. And, as a result, it's, could very much, set up the situation when we get to Best of Both Worlds, where the Federation takes that threat seriously. They actually gather ships up and try to confront the Q as it's approaching, as opposed to just sending in a few ships sort of piecemeal and hoping for the best. It's like, oh, this is a strange ship showing up on our border. Let's go first contact. Oh, we're all dead. Well, that was half the flotilla that we would have had at an actual battle. So the other half goes in and they're crushed quickly. And so we have just slightly less time for the Enterprise to figure out their plan to sort out everything. Slightly less time before the cube gets to Earth and starts assimilating people. So, having us have a warning in terms of, Q's, perspective here might have resulted in the Earth being, not taken over by cyborgs. So that's maybe something interesting to think about.
Though it is heavily implied that they wouldn't have gotten to Earth that soon if Q hadn't have done this.
True. But, like what I just laid out, it's all speculation. So, it is a lot of what ifs we could sort of play here. And, if they wouldn't have shown up for, years on end, perhaps even centuries, the Federation might have, been in a very different place by that point. Alternatively, the Federation post Wolf 359 was a bit more interested in building up the fleet, replacing a lot of ships and perhaps having a lot more ships out in service, which then when, they encountered the Dominion, meant that they were not in a terrible spot. Once again, the what if game strikes.
It reminds me a little bit of the Watchmen thing you're manipulating everything after the fact to save stuff, but you have the power that if you actually gave a shit, you could have changed this at any time.
Indeed. So, there's a lot of, possibilities to think about of how things would have been if things had been laid out differently in universe. Out of universe, we got a new villain. They seem pretty cool. People like them. Let's keep bringing them back.
I think that it's interesting that they have a note in here that the designs are very H.R. Giger inspired, which I guess the bug thing. The only way that you could make this work if they were supposed to be bugs originally would be to kind of do an Aliens.
Yes.
Which I'm glad they didn't just do Aliens again, because everyone was doing Aliens.
Yes. I remember that seeing that movie called, I think it was called Life or something like that. It's like, International Space Station stand-in location, modernish day, and they encounter an alien life form, and it does a whole aliens thing on them, and they're like, oh no, we're all dying. Oh gosh. I'm like, I'm getting so bored watching this. And, that was before it was kind of everywhere, but yeah.
I also hadn't heard of this other inspiration. Have you heard of Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future?
The name, I think, has come up, but I have no context for it.
Here, I'm just going to send you this I'm sending you a picture of the main villain.
Oh, yeah, that does look like a bit of a Borg fellow there. It's like maybe a little Darth Vader too, but mostly Borg, yeah.
For the audience, it is a guy who's basically wearing Darth Vader's chest plate and has a metal skull cap on with one big red electronic eye.
Kind of covers half his face sort of thing going on. Antennas or something like that, kind of off the side.
Yeah, so you can kind of see this very heavy inspiration from the Borgs into this, which is something that I didn't put together before, but I've always really enjoyed that kind of idea. Like, that's one of the things that I always enjoyed with the like Mass Effect games and that universe, which is these aliens are very obviously inspired by the clunky rubber suit aliens from early 80s science fiction. So the Borg are really just an update of, we're just going to put a bunch of plastic armor on a dude.
Yep. Just, it's a look that you can't really go wrong with, unless it's like placemats from like a lot of choice. There's another reference I got in this one, because that was the plastic that just looked terrible, but any other time it looks pretty good.
I enjoyed this episode a lot, and I've always enjoyed it, but I think that's interesting to me because people praise this up one side and down the other. This is called like the first great episode of Next Generation, and
second.
It was nominated for Emmys. It won 2 Emmys. It was nominated for 3. I would say, though, that overall, watching it again, it's always been a little disappointing to me on how much it is just we couldn't introduce these things before, and we couldn't think of a natural way to do it.
Yes. Having another colony vanish would have maybe been another option, but maybe they were like, it's been done sort of thing there. And you could also, not getting away like they did, would really be possible. So,
but also not to get too critical of it, but there's not really a particular character progression. Because
not really.
the entire thing is very much look, here is something that you are not prepared to encounter. It is overwhelmingly powerful and it doesn't like you. And you don't have a way to deal with it. You can't fight your way out. You can't talk your way out. There's absolutely nothing that you could in fact do. And there's no reason for us to believe that Picard, who's the central decision maker of the episode, had any particularly hubristic reason for believing that he could handle anything. He mostly said that to get Q to go away.
Yes.
We weren't shown him being particularly overconfident with other situations. That's not really one of his main character flaws, is overconfidence.
Indeed.
So
though he maybe was being overconfident with dealing with Q specifically.
Yeah, maybe a little, but not enough to
to justify this.
If his character had always been overconfident, and then he showed that with Q, then it'd be like, okay, this is why he's getting punished for it now, and he has to learn a lesson. But mostly it's just this is kind of a very weird, shitty conservative argument that you need to be prepared to defend yourself against something that is not only overwhelmingly more powerful than you, but will negate any attempt at negotiation or dealing or any other peaceful way of dealing with the situation.
We cannot negotiate with these folks because they're all terrorists, and we don't negotiate with terrorists because we don't want to, and also we can't because they're terrorists.
Which puts the Borg in a very strange niche for that, because you can do that, especially in fiction. And most of the time, when you have a overwhelmingly powerful force that you cannot negotiate with, it's basically taking the narrative place of a natural disaster.
A force of nature.
Yeah, it's like you can't negotiate with a hurricane, But the Borg are a weird one because they keep on characterizing them more and more, especially as the series continues. So we're not treating them like a force of nature. This isn't a disaster episode, which it very well could be. Like they encounter this thing, they don't understand it, they have to learn enough about it on the fly while they're directly under threat to be able to save themselves, despite the fact that there's very little that they can do, which is how you treat a lot of natural disaster style arcs. Like, either it's just a scramble survival, or you have to quickly learn as much as possible to be able to deal with the situation, which is what they usually do in Star Trek because it's all about the technology.
Yes. Well, I guess there's, to a certain extent, having it be all about the technology increases over time as well in this era of Star Trek. So, maybe this is an in-universe motivation for doing that. It's like, we're going to solve our problems with negotiation. Have you tried technobabble?
Yeah, those are the two modes of solving problems.
Yes.
But the fact that they couldn't solve this as a problem does some weird stuff in the episode for me, because they don't deal with it very well, but they also don't learn anything from it particularly. They go, okay, Q, get us out of this. Gee, guess we weren't ready to hit those Borg. Yeah. Darn.
Huh. Well, let's not worry about this for now, but maybe consider it for a bit of self-reflection between episodes.
So I kind of have trouble parsing the message that you're supposed to get from this entirely, especially since the Borg, as they are in this episode, really don't have much characterization. They're there, they are too powerful, and you leave. We don't know what they do, we don't know why they are, we don't learn any of the more scary things about them that we get later with the whole sort of zombie integration.
Yes. So they want the ship at this point is all we sort of get the vibe for. Having them want more, well, that comes later.
Yeah. So, they could be super scavengers. They'll just grab whatever pieces of technology or things.
Which would kind of explain their whole aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. But they also, don't do a lot to explain why, because, do they just need raw materials? Are they actually doing something with the technology? If they want the technology, why are they taking technology that is obviously so drastically inferior to the technology they already have?
Mm-hmm. Do they, need, new technology to keep their ship running? Do they, but they seem to be able to regenerate it all the same. Just kind of think about it and it repairs itself.
And I can't exactly point to what's gone wrong with it, but the Borg in this episode don't fill the role of a natural disaster, which is just big and powerful, and you as a small lowly being can do nothing in the face of it. But they also don't fill the role of the, we don't know anything about this sort of vaguely malevolent force that you get in, more sort of alien abduction narratives, which you could also get in this. Is something big and powerful that we do not have the ability to comprehend. Because they try to comprehend it, they sort of get somewhere, but they don't get far enough in their understanding to make it here is how we have to deal with this too powerful situation. But they get too far in their understanding for it to be an unknowable malevolence.
Yes. So you're kind of left in a weird gap spot between the two, which is a little frustrating when you think about it.
Yeah, and then they had to leave before anything particularly bad happens.
Yeah, they might have run off with the toilet there, but we're going to be okay, and we're going to be all smiles by the end of the episode because Q can save us.
Yeah, they run off with the toilet, and then a few people die off screen.
Yes, because apparently that entire section was destroyed. Because
I mean, if they'd known they weren't going to keep her on for very many more episodes, we could have had a very harrowing death of the cute little ensign.
Indeed. She'd been kind of worried about, things going wrong all episode, and then things go horribly wrong for her. So maybe this is something that'll affect Geordi or whoever else, knew her before this point, going into the future. And it's that could be an emotional impact thing that helps breed character development.
I think the other reason that it doesn't hit very hard as anything bad happening is because Picard is not very upset.
Nope.
He should be livid. He should be shouting Q down at the end of the episode of you killed 14 people to make a point.
Yeah. It's this is not cool. This is absurd. You promised to leave us alone forever. And yet, now there are 18 people who are dead. Also, when you didn't call out my putting women in fridges trope. You should have done that.
Put women in toilets.
Yeah, so I guess other than, being a natural disaster or a unknowable, incredibly powerful malevolence or something that's kind of different, there is, of course, interpreting the Borg as metaphor. At this point, given we don't have very much characterization other than what Guinan and Q basically tell us about their whole shtick, we can't really interpret beyond a certain point. But, Q says that they're the ultimate users. They are beings that are here only really interested in what you can, what your technology offers to them. And so, they are uncaring otherwise about all these, people on the ship. So, don't really, let them just run around willy-nilly. So get to it, Picard. Shoot somebody. But there is, I guess, sort of going with that specific idea that they are here to harvest, to make use of you and what you got around you. That sort of can be, then expanded into a variety of different narratives you could try to come up with. Is this the faceless corporation that is here to mine all your your local area down and leave you with nothing but slag behind? Or is this the Soviet Union style government that is making all of you work in their factories and basically doing the same thing as the big corporation and leaving everyone sick and all the local resources stripped away? Or is this something else that we consider to make a particular characterization where somewhere some powerful force is trying to take all you have and you need to be afraid of it?
Well, they wind up in a problem in the early episodes, because in the later episodes where they introduce more, you can read some very obvious metaphors. A couple of those fit, especially given the early 90s mentalities we will be getting into. But right now, the thing that really hurts them, even metaphorically, is that 80s Star Trek is not going to touch the imperialist metaphor.
Nope.
And this is very much the only thing that they could easily slot into if you want them to be anything more concrete than they already are. Because there is nothing scarier to a conqueror than the idea that they will themselves be treated the way they treat others.
Indeed. It's like, wait, this isn't fair. We're supposed to be the ones on top conquering everyone. What's going on?
And this sort of uncaring, malevolent entity that just comes in and takes over and doesn't give a toss about you or your life and just wants the resources that they can exploit from you is very much a colonialist idea. It's not one we were going to touch in the 80s. It's not an idea we were willing to entertain. And there is no way they were really going to do enough to make it horrifying, which is why it winds up feeling a little bit, toothless in a lot of our Borg encounters until we get into the actual sort of body horror part.
Yes, we don't want to go and use them for the obvious sort of fear moment here, so we got to come up with something else for people to be afraid of, otherwise they become kind of silly. Body horror, everyone hates that.
So right now they aren't being used for a particular metaphor. It's sort of a colonial narrative, but it's a weird one it doesn't work the direction that they had to do it. Having their original intention that the Borg are already futzing around the neutral zone, that would have worked. You have an invading force coming in that you know nothing about. It's just taking your resources and doesn't care about anything else.
Yes, and which is particularly upsetting when there's a particularly upsetting, political situation in the area, and having an external force kind of come in and interfere, would be an opportunity for the sides to sort of put aside their differences against the external force, or alternatively something that is going to exacerbate a already tense situation between two major powers.
It wasn't a very good comic, and it was an even worse movie, but there's a comic called Cowboys vs. Aliens that actually toyed with this concept in a slightly interesting way. I wish it had been written a little bit better because it was an interesting idea, but it kind of starts out with the general Western expansion, taking of land from Native Americans to exploit for mining purposes, and then partway through that, aliens show up and just start killing everybody because they want the gold.
Yes. So I've not read this myself, but it is an interesting sort of premise for a story there.
Yeah, I mean, knowing that, the rest is kind of what it says on the box.
Yes. And so you have these, cowboys fighting aliens, I guess. And,
and they have to, of course, they have to team up with the Native Americans, otherwise everyone's going to die. And it's a little ambiguous whether or not things go back to the status quo after that.
Yes. Well, I guess you could always, run off with the idea yourself and create your own franchise and do it a lot better.
You could, but then you'd have to do something. I mean, I don't know. Is the writer's strike even going to be over by then? Yeah.
Depends. Has the CEOs of various Hollywood major corporations, have they learned to have a heart yet?
So no.
Yeah.
So no, the Borg haven't decided that they need to work with people.
But AI will solve all our Borg problems.
I will admit, I don't think it's going to be good, but there is something that I find intermittently very hilarious about how badly AI-written things turn out. So there will at least be some mildly entertaining things happening if they try to write and do everything with AI.
It's like there was a big insurgent, I guess insurgent would be probably the right term actually, of absurdist humor in the mid-2000s, and due to the adoption of AI as a primary means of writing scripts. Nobody liked it because it was just got really annoying after a while, and all the intense dramas were now turned into comedies because, well, nothing made any sense anymore. But if you like absurdist humor, that's the time period to go for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is a very particular kind of absurdism.
Yes.
But that's neither here nor there. Though, if would have been very fun if they'd written all the Borg scripts with generative AI.
Not like the rest of the episodes, that for the crew and all that, but just what the Borg's doing specifically.
Yeah, any of the Borg dialogue.
Which I guess maybe explains a few decisions the Borg make throughout the various series. That maybe they have integrated some really poorly put together AIs that are telling them to do things that they have no reason to question, but also aren't actually going to help them at all.
Mm.
You need to fly over there.
Why do we keep losing? The AI told us to do this thing that made sense every other time.
Now, only send one cube towards planet Earth at a time. Trust me. Open up an interspatial flexure to fluidic space and try to assimilate everything that's there. It'd be a great idea. Okay. But yeah, so the Borg. They now...
that gets to be a turnaround in Voyager. The Borg are overconfident.
Oh no. Which, is kind of true. If you're the Borg, your whole premise is that you don't lose, you adapt. So, but that's still stuff, years in the future for both the series and us, really. Unless you want to have like a separate Voyager podcast, we just start randomly.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. If we're going to get to any of the other ones, we need to start running every single one of these things simultaneously.
Yes. Which I guess we could do soon enough when, DS9 starts up. But anyway. Yeah.
But for now,
what's it tomorrow?
We got Borgs,
Borgs. And tubules everywhere.
Yeah, there's lots of tubes. They, in fact, grow and flex when they show the, zoom in on that repair. There's a bunch of tubes just snaking around. It goes, shh, tube. Tube noise.
Oh, no. So that's what a tuba is.
All right, I'm tired, and I'm going to keep talking about tubes, so.
Well, I guess, maybe one of the last things I wanted to sort of, talk about is the Daleks again.
Oh, yes, Daleks, who aren't Borgs, but are sort of Borg adjacent.
Yes, and Cybermen, and Doctor Who a little bit. Not any depth here, but the Cybermen from Doctor Who are kind of actually very similar to the Borg, especially in their early iterations. That the Daleks as well, where they're technologically adaptive and are trying to slowly take over the universe, sort of stuff there. But the Cybermen are more certainly closer in relationship to the Borg here. Just the Cybermen kind of go for the single look overall, and it's still again a plastic bit of armor. With a weird faceplate going on, but a little bit more symmetrical, unlike the Borg here. But the early iterations of the Cybermen were that they were on a planet that was an exact duplicate of Earth, which also happens in Star Trek sometimes, of course. And and their planet was dying, and they were like, "Oh, we gotta like do some stuff to ourselves in order to survive our situation." And so they started, embedding themselves with various cybernetic enhancements and such. And eventually, they're like, "Well, we're going fully into the machine now here, so we are, putting aside our humanity, even though we're not quite human, we're like humans." But anyway. And so eventually they, go fully into the cybernetic sort of, form there, but they're not interlinked, unlike the Borg here. So this is a evolution of scary cybernetic peoples here.
Yeah, they never quite know what to do with the hive mind thing, but it is like kind of their defining feature.
Indeed. Which I guess for myself, even, throughout the various sort of iterations of the Borg as we see things going forward, I guess I sort of see them as, the hive mind as sort of like centralized for each ship, and the, quote, chorus of everything that like the Queen is all about is more like organizing the ships to talk to each other in a coherent fashion, as opposed to all of them just being constantly exposed to the noise forever. That there's not much of a hierarchy, but there is, some sort of semblance of such in order to have a proper, telephone exchange. But, that's me maybe overthinking the whole situation. But as far as Cybermen are concerned, nope, no interlink there unless they really need it for some reason.
Yeah.
Daleks even less so. They just,
We went from guys in suits with plastic who aren't connected to better looking guys in suits with plastic who are connected.
Yes. And where you can see more skin again. So, but yeah, the early Cybermen, were actually their costumes were kind of creepy because they were, they were like, we're going to have like cloth over the face. And, it's like, yeah, it's sort of implying that their skin's been replaced, sort of. Ew. But then they just went full face mask later. But yeah.
Yeah. You got some weird stuff with early bad budget sci-fi on those.
Yes. And, oh gosh, early Doctor Who and low budgets, like the episode where they go to the planet of all the insect people, and there's the ants, which are basically just guys in ant suits where you could clearly see the guy's legs and, just a big plastic or paper mache even potentially thing around them.
My favorite was when there were a bunch of bugs on the space station, and one of them was just very clearly a dude wrapped in green bubble wrap.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, the Ark in Space, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, yeah, it looks horribly cheap, but that's what they got the budget for. So it's still that particular adventure is still a fun one. But it is I guess another sort of alien sort of vibe there, but it was doing it before it was cool, so it's okay. So, Kevin, what are you assimilating these days?
Nothing much. We're just going to have to move on to things because I don't have anything interesting to talk about because I haven't watched anything recently with cyborgs in it.
Well, I suppose I could, pull things around in a weird, funky way and, point out that these, the Borg, especially this era, look less like, messed up cyborg guys and more folks in some really curious-looking bondage gear.
That is true.
Yes, which makes the comment about the Enterprise being punished if they try to resist a little more, I guess, saucy.
Yeah, and we're moving on.
Yeah.
So now it's time for the galaxy's favorite game show.
Woo! Hey everybody, welcome to the Galaxy's favorite game show, where we're going to leave the sauce behind for today, but we're going to have a lot of other things to hand out, if you know what I mean. As far as prizes and things do, because our various contestants have been racking up all sorts of scores today, and some of these scores are a little regular. I think Kevin, are you seeing this? Is that's a perfect square there, right? Or is that a perfect cube? Drat. Where's my calculator? Anyway, I should probably start handing out some things here. The first prize is the Menacing Geometry Prize, which goes to the Borg, because their cubes certainly are menacing. What do they win, Gepwin?
I think that the Borg need more creative shaping. Like, they need to win a book of geometry or at least some kind of interesting architecture. Because mathematically, share a cube, and I know we get sphere later, but if you were just gonna extrapolate the full-on, like, most space-efficient shape for a spaceship that didn't need to worry about aerodynamics, I'm sure you'd get something, like, really weird and interesting.
Indeed.
And I want it. I want Borg triangles. I want Borg tetrahedrons.
We do get a sort of a weird, like, asymmetric sort of blocky thing I think it was Dark Descent, near the end of the series.
Yeah.
But that's sort of a special circumstances given what's going on.
And, like, yes, the sphere is definitely the most space-efficient shape for a spaceship because you get maximum internal space for minimum surface area, and you don't want too much surface area in space. But it's still boring. It's very boring. Spheres are much more boring and less menacing than cubes.
Yeah, there's a reason in Stellar Renaissance I gave the big giant spaceship you guys read into a more of a pyramidal sort of shape. But anywho, let's go ahead and move on to our next prize, which is the Sufficiently Advanced Aliens prize, which goes to Q, but also Guinan, because she's got some sort of trouble sensing powers and can, like, go toe-to-toe with Q maybe or something, but I don't know. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win a copy of Dune, because, like, they don't know what they're doing with Guinan, but I feel like if they'd gone full Bene Gesserit, it would have been way more interesting. She already has a little bit of, like, I can sense trouble, etc., etc. Why isn't she just doing the cool meditation mindfuckery that you do from practicing things for thousands of years? You know?
Indeed. I also wonder if, like, under her hat, she has, like, a third head.
Where's her second head?
She keeps that in the box behind the bar. Anyway, the final prize for today is the greenest ensign, which goes to Sonia Gomez for kind of coming off like she just wanted out of Starfleet's recruiting office, not the academy. What does she win, Gepwin?
She wins that entire backstory we're supposed to get, where we find out that she got jumped forward because she's so smart, but that's why she, like, doesn't know what's going on, and she soon has to, like, do all the other things, and by the time we get to disaster, she's taking an over engineering and saves the day.
That could be kind of fun, actually. An alternative take as things go forward in Next Generation here, and and giving a good solid justification why she's Captain Gomez pretty quickly.
Yeah, look out for a new continuing segment. What would Ensign Gomez be up to?
So, Sonia Gomez, hope you have a long and adventurous career throughout all that. Anywho, that's all I got here for today, Gepwin. Feel free to take us away, but try not to run off with our technology.
Yes, thanks everyone for joining us. Try not to get assimilated, and thanks for being here for the galaxy's favorite game show.
Woo!
Now, I don't know about you, but, like, I think Elementary, Dear Data, and Q-Who are very good episodes overall.
Yes. I'd agree.
I don't know if I like them enough to forgive the fact that this is why we have to deal with a clip show at the end of this season.
Well, we're not quite to the clip show episode yet, at least. But, Shades of Grey is... it was something that was necessary from the budgetary side, but it's just suffering for a full hour.
Yeah.
And most of it's the audience, not just Riker. But we got other things to worry about before then.
Yeah, we've got other things to happen before this, like snares and Samaritans.
Yes, and things that make us go.
Yes.
And, this is the Mondu.
So, yeah, next we got the Samaritan snare, which is their, you get the aliens that they decided to misunderstand and use as a main villain for Lower Decks later.
Indeed. Which, is kind of hilarious, but at the same time, a little like, what?
Mm-hmm.
But, the Packlets, they make their debut. Now, the Packlets do show up as background characters, especially in DS9, because I guess they live nearby. This is like their time that they actually are, like, centralized to a plot of an episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're around.
Yeah. Kind of just hanging out. Sometimes talking to Jake Sisko. because that happens once in an episode. It's like, it's like background character. I'm going to pretend like I'm talking to you. And now we're going to the actual thing I'm now involved in.
I mean, I like that they're just around, even if it's just because they're reusing prosthetics.
And in fact, I'd rather like it when that happens in Star Trek. So good on them there, because it means that you're not like leaving an alien race to be forgotten forever, which happens pretty often, honestly. It's like, another rubber forehead aliens just for this week, Planet of Hats, whatever. We'll go moving on. But having folks show up more than once, I like it.
So next time we're getting the Packlids, and we know what happens with them. And not a lot's going to happen with them, honestly. It's a fun episode, but we're not going to have a ton. Though I do think it's interesting that this is going to be the only other episode that Ensign Gomez shows up in. And I'd kind of forgotten that the other things that I liked from her filmography are she plays the bad guy's girlfriend in the first episode of The Flash from 1990, which is one of my favorite Flash versions. And also, the year after that, she was in some sort of movie that I don't know what is, but it's called Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town.
Nice. Apparently is 4.1 stars on IMDb.
That's more than I would expect. Film about an all-female motorcycle game named the Cycle Sluts, who cruised an isolated town looking for a good time. Here, an evil scientist turned mortician has been killing local townspeople with the aid of his long-suffering dwarf assistant and turning them into zombies to use as labor in an abandoned mine.
So, I guess not as extensive, destruction as Night of the Comet, but still zombies and, girls going to town on the bad guys.
Yeah, this is so, I don't know, this looks interesting.
So, should we add to the queue?
We should. I mean, it's not, I doubt it'll be good, but...
Well, look for Chopper Chicks in Zombie Town sometime in the far future.
Formerly known as Chrome Hearts, apparently. Anyway, I think the Packlids are fun, and I'm not intentionally trying to not talk about next week's episode, but I just randomly found this, and it needed to be known.
Yes. I do, I guess, there is some painful moments in this next episode, but overall, I kind of like it.
Yeah. I mean, it's not great comedy, but it's decent comedy.
Yes. And it has character moments, so win-win.
So next time we got the Sumerian Snare.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, making spaceships go! You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.